Boy, what a crowd.
Yeah.
I like this. A great big welcome to all of you, and thank you for coming. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you our speaker for our next lecture. Now, Kody Norris was born and raised in Mountain City, Tennessee. He was born to Ginger Tester Norris and Kenny Norris. His family's been around here for generations, and I know that because I got to eat many meals at his great-grandmother's table. From what I heard, when he was small, he always carried a guitar with him. And when he was just a small boy, he drove around in his Uncle Jack's El Camino listening to music. I know from my own experience that he played music at the community center alongside Frank Grayson and many others that I can't remember. But, I'm getting old. I also heard his group, the Wallaga Mountain Boys, play a concert on top of White Top Mountain at the Ramp Festival. That was many years ago. It was when he was first getting started. It was wonderful. Now, more recently, myself and Mary Nave and Billy Walker and his family and a lot of others, and maybe others in this room, were in the audience when he made his Grand Ole Opry debut. That was really, really special. It was a memorable night. He's amassed many accolades and awards, including IBMA or nominations, SPIGMA nominations. He's been the SPIGMA Entertainer of the Year for 4 years in a row, and he's nominated for the 5th, as well as the IBMA. He's nominated for the Song of the Year, the Music Video of the Year, which is the Auctioneer, the Entertainer of the Year, and Mary Rachel is nominated for the Fiddle Player of the Year. And I could stand here and I could talk about Kody till this time tomorrow. But as Kody says on every show he performs, here's Kody Norris from Mountain City, Tennessee.
Well, good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? Good. Before I go any further, I always ask you, how many of y'all are here today? Good. I'm not sure if I am yet or not. We worked down in Atlanta last night and on a festival down there and had a good time right north of Atlanta. And then let's see, the night before I think we were in Savannah, Georgia on another little show date down there. And I'm home today and part of the day tomorrow, and then we head out. We've got a really busy next 4 or 5 days from Kentucky to Pennsylvania to Vermont, and then wind back up in Owensboro, Kentucky for a show for the Bluegrass Hall of Fame on Saturday. So lots of miles and, all that good stuff. But thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this, and I was just talking in conversation back there just a bit ago. I'm excited to kind of talk just a little bit today about getting my start. And it was certainly an exciting venture and honestly something that I never dreamed or thought that it would wind up being what it is today. I'm so thankful for that fact in every form of the word. But let's go back to, let's see, this was probably about 1998. Or 97 maybe. I attended First Free Will Baptist Church here in town, and music was a big part of my life growing up. Always, the one thing I look forward to each and every week, Sunday mornings on WMCT here in town. Harold Garland had a bluegrass gospel program on that came on 6 o'clock on Sunday mornings, and I don't care if I stayed up till 4 o'clock Sunday morning, out from doing whatever we were doing the night before. I never had a bedtime growing up. Mom and Dad were only concerned that wake-up time was when I was getting up. So it was on me. The ball was in my court, whatever I decided to do with it. And I learned really quick a bedtime was a smart thing to have. But anyway, each Sunday morning was filled with that bluegrass gospel music at our house. And I'd turn that on and listen to that all through the morning while we was getting ready to go to church. And then, on up about 9 o'clock, we go to First Free Will Baptist Church, which I attended my whole childhood. And little did I know then, so many of the people that I went to church with every single Sunday would be so important in my musical journey. And two of the people that really stick out from back at that time were Larry and Brenda Barry. They had a little gospel group that they traveled around regionally with here, and just wonderful, wonderful people, and were so good to me. But my first mandolin that I ever had I'd expressed to Mom and Dad that I wanted a mandolin. I'd already had a little guitar around the house that I thought I had to take everywhere I went with me, afraid it was going to, get away from me or something. But I expressed wanting to play the mandolin. And so Mom and Dad bought me the mandolin, and my mom will probably still tell you to this day, I was into everything as a kid. I wanted to do everything. So she probably thought that was going to be just one of the other 2-week things that I decided to do. But it began to get a little bit deeper than that. My dad worked away from home most of the time, and when he would come home in the summer, bluegrass festivals and fiddlers conventions and things along those lines, those were number one. That was our Thursday till Sunday every week. So we would go like to Ralph Stanley's festival in Coburn, Virginia. We'd go to Slagle's Pasture Bluegrass Festival in Elizabeth. The Doc Watson Festival over at Sugar Grove. It was something every weekend. And of course, tobacco business being big, as I was growing up, I was always with my Uncle Jack in the summertime, running back and forth to the tobacco patch to check on things in the evening. And his Chevy El Camino that he drove around back then had a Stanley Brothers 16 Greatest Hits cassette in the 8-track player. And so all this stuff's going on. I've got the gospel singing on Sundays. I've got the bluegrass gospel early in the mornings on Sundays. And then, all the whole rest of my time, every minute that I'm not in school, there's something, really about music. And it's just, my brain is just absorbing this all the time. And so I'm beginning to wonder, what are these sounds I'm hearing? What is this? So by the time I was about 10 years old, I could already distinguish the harmony parts, in the quartet. So I was experimenting with that at church. And where I learned that from, and the Stanley Brothers singing The Hills of Roane County, and I've got another little story about that as I go along in a minute, but that song was where I was able to distinguish the tenor part from the lead part. And I didn't know what the difference was, but I knew there was something. And, training an ear, especially as I have taught, so many students throughout my career, sometimes training the ear is not the easiest thing in the world. I feel like that's a God-given talent, really. And so I guess he blessed me with that ability, early on to be able to distinguish that. And time just keeps rolling. About the time I'm about maybe 11 years old, I've still got this mandolin, and I go every Saturday morning, Junior Cornett's furniture store down here in the shopping center near the pawn shop. If it was a Saturday morning, we were home, I would be down there about 8:30, as soon as he opened the door, because Junior could play a little bit on everything. And he got me started playing the Wildwood Flower on the mandolin. And I was just struggling. My fingers would get sore. I'd play till my fingers would literally bleed. I wanted to learn it so bad. Well, one Sunday, the preacher, Frank Woods, at First Free Will, asked me if I would get up and play something in front of the congregation. And man, I was shaking in my boots. I will never forget that day. And I fumbled around. I got nervous, and it was just a terrible experience. Well, sitting in the crowd at my church, and I went to church with this man every Sunday, but I had no idea of all the things that he had done in his past related to bluegrass music. But that was Coolidge Allen, and one of the most he was as large as life to me within my world growing up. And he drove a school bus here in the county, but he lived most of his working life in Red Line, Pennsylvania. And he came and told my dad one day, he said, if that boy wants to learn to play that mandolin, you bring him to my house and I'll straighten him out on that. And those exact words. And a capo is something that's used primarily with a guitar and a banjo to change the chord that you're playing in. Well, a mandolin and a capo are kind of like a fiddle and a capo. That's a big no-no in the bluegrass music world. So I'm trying to learn how to play with this capo. Dad takes me over to Coolidge Allen's house, and he's 6'4". He's a big guy, and I have to go up and knock on the door by myself. I'm this tall, so I go and open the door. He's got a sliding glass door, and it opens up, and it's like David and Goliath standing there, And everybody had always told me, he's kind of gruff, he's kind of blunt and straight to the point, and lots of kids that I knew in the church, they were scared to death of him. But he was the most wonderful, wonderful man to me. And he opens the door, brings me in, sets me down in his house. He says, the first song I ever heard him play was The Great Speckled Bird, Roy Acuff. And he played that for me, and he said, now see if you can do that. So what do? I reach in my pocket and I get that capo and put it on my mandolin. He literally, without saying a word, reaches over and grabs that off my mandolin and throws it into a little garbage can that was sitting beside his chair. He said, we don't use those here, and you won't be using one from now on. So I said, but you threw it away. He said, just well to throw it away. You don't need it. So anyway, through him, I met so many other, wonderful people that I knew them from here in the community, but I had no idea about their music. And a couple of those people were Jim Norris, a barber. He and I, we were no relation, but his little barber shop down here behind now where 421 Creamery is, he had a small little music shop in there, and Jim was a wonderful banjo player, one of the best I ever heard. He knew so much. And Earl Payne, wonderful musician also. Lloyd Dunn. I met all these people, that like I say, they were people in the community, but I had no idea how good of musicians that I was being exposed to. And every Tuesday night at Jim Norris's house, which basically across the road from where I live right now, he and Coolidge Allen and Earl and Stella Payne and sometimes some other folks, they'd gather in up there about 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. They'd play till midnight. And that was the one night a week. That's actually the little story that I shared a minute ago about the bedtime deal at my house. I had those guys to thank for that, because my mom wasn't going to tell them that I couldn't come up there. She didn't want to, disappoint them. And once I got used to being up till, 12 o'clock at night and still getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to school, it was no sweat. I was making it just fine. So, and it's a good thing that I learned that back then. No more sleep than I get today in my business, that's for sure. But, actually his death date was just a few days ago, June the 18th, 2001. The first time that I ever truly felt sorrow in my life was losing Coolidge Allen. And I had no idea just how big a figure that he would be in forming the version of Kody Norris that you see today. And one thing that he always really pushed me to do, if you're going to perform in front of people, always look good. Distinguish yourself from the audience that you're playing in front of, and always be sure that you stand out. Because if you don't, you're no different than if you just bought a ticket. And if you just want to buy a ticket, don't be an entertainer, just go buy a ticket and sit and watch a show. And always, with a shirt and a tie and a hat, and shine your shoes, and look the part. Well, I always wondered why he touched on these things. Well, later, right before he passed away, he calls me up one day. I go up to his house, and I get all these stories about from the time that he and his family, as most people did in this area, left to go north to find better jobs. And he and his brother Hardin, they formed a musical group in Red Line, Pennsylvania called the Allen Brothers and the Sunny Valley Boys. Well, there was so many places, up in that area to play music at. And so they were a very well-known regional band. They had a great little radio show. And anybody in here heard of Dale McCurry? Anybody know who Dale McCurry is? I asked Dale McCurry at a festival a while back. I literally just walked up to him. I said, I'm going to say a name and you give me all your thoughts. And I said, Coolidge Allen. He just lit up. He really lit up. And he was sharing some stories with me, of that time in life. And Coolidge drove the school bus up there, and he would play a little bit with him. And so many of the other musicians, that played with him. And one of the people that Coolidge got hooked up with as far as a mainstream entertainer, and he played with him for a couple of years, was Charlie Monroe, which was Bill Monroe, the father of Bluegrass's brother. And Charlie Monroe, a country star in his own right in the 40s and 50s. And the fact that somebody from Mountain City, Tennessee, little old Mountain City, had that connection to all these people. And Coolidge had another connection to Hank Williams. He knew so many people from that, from that time. And the fact that he thought enough of me to share all this with me, tell me the stories, share the experiences with me, the ins and outs of the music business. And y'all, I'd learned all this stuff by the time I was like 12 years old. But June the 18th, 2001, first time I'd ever experienced loss, Coolidge Allen passed away, and I had just talked to him the night before on the phone, we were going to go play some music this following day. And the level of sorrow that I felt triggered something in me that I've never felt since. But it established a drive in me to want to preserve this music, to want to play it forward, to want to do every single thing that I could do with it. And I started at that point wanting to just really do something, do something with it. I didn't maybe ever think I'd do it for a living, but I wanted to be sure that it never went away. And there were so many people when I all through my teenage years, I played a lot of different places, around here. One of those places being Moorfield Store over in Sugar Creek. That's just a hidden treasure that so many people throughout the world have now been to, and I'm thankful for that. But prior to that, Herd Reed Store, the old Davison store in Shingletown, I went there every Friday night, and through there, and people like Lloyd Dunn and Frank Grayson and Clint Howard, and I got to meet Doc Watson through that. Literally, Frank would just show up over there to play, and there'd be a guy sitting in his pickup, and it'd be Doc Watson, to just stop in and play a little while. And I had no idea at that time, how good that I had it, and and taking the stories in and just listening to all this stuff. This whole time, I'm still wondering, what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do? So we fast forward. Let's go to the time that I was in high school, and this was the day that the light came on. I was eating down at Cook's Restaurant with Bob Davis from the Davis Glass Shop. A lot of y'all remember Bob. We had a mutual friend, Dr. Harold Burnett from Johnson City, who was a big bluegrass fan. And Bob had told him about me, and he comes up and takes us to lunch one day. Well, we're sitting in there talking. He brings me a big picture of Bill Monroe about this big that I still have in my office today. And we have this long, drawn-out conversation. Well, in the meantime, I don't remember John's last name, but the gentleman who bought Cook's Restaurant from Bryce Cook, he comes over and sits down and starts talking to us. Well, within just a couple of minutes, Dr. Burnett has lined me up a Friday night job that I didn't know I had for the whopping sum of $30. Wow. I'm going to make $30, and I'm only going to have to play my guitar for 4 hours. And man, I couldn't even spell $30 at that point in time. I didn't, I just knew somebody was going to pay me to do something, and when the alternative to that was spending all those hot summer days in a tobacco patch, $30 sounded good to stand in the AC and play a guitar. So I start in with that, and within 2 or 3 weeks, there's hundreds of people coming every Friday night. The restaurant's full of people. And I thought it was just for the roast beef because it was phenomenal, but come to find out it wasn't. So I added another couple guys to come and help me along. And then right about this time, I met through going to Moorfield Store, I met Bill Taylor, and Bill Taylor had a little group regionally called the Sounds of Bluegrass, and he and some guys, Clay Moody and Hal May, some guys from over in Carolina. They literally played 3 nights a week, little jobs around, within a couple hundred miles of Mountain City. So they asked my mom if I could start playing the mandolin with them. And so I'm still doing that. I'm still playing at Cook's, doing all these, all these things. And Tom Isaacs, who is from over in Violence, Tom and I were the same age, and they brought him to a practice one night. Well, that started something that we kind of had something special. We connected immediately. We sang well together. We played well together. And once the Sounds of Bluegrass thing kind of, did its thing, we're 16 at this time. So what are we going to do? So we started playing fiddlers conventions. But more important, we started winning fiddlers conventions and getting a little bit of notoriety. We got our picture in the paper a few places. And then we kind of, it was more of a for fun kind of thing. We start, naturally as a good guidance counselor in high school does, they start talking to you about getting ready for your future and all the things you're going to do. Well, I had it in my mind. I wanted to go into the Air Force. That's something that I had, what I always wanted to do. And so we're working towards that, and I've taken a couple practice tests and taken some stuff, and randomly, one Sunday night, I get a phone call. I was gone, but it was on the answering machine at the house. And it's a man named James Allen Shelton. And James Allen Shelton was the lead guitar player for Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys.
Woohoo.
And, you know, growing up around our house, you know, the Stanley brothers rated right up there with about the top things you'd ever want to talk about. If you wanted to, you know, just stop anything in their tracks, why the Stanley brothers would do it. And it wouldn't have been any different if the president would have called it, or Queen of England would have called it. It was the huge, I can't explain to you how big that phone call was. So it took me 2 days to get the courage to call the number back. And I had no idea why they'd even called. But a few weeks prior to that, we'd been over at the Carter Fold at Hilton's, Virginia, and James Shelton had heard me play. And when I finally make the phone call, someone answers the phone. Come to find out, Ralph Stanley needed somebody to fill in for a little while in the absence of his son as a lead singer and a guitar player. So I go for my audition over in Kingsport. They were having a thing called the Clinch Mountain Music Festival. I sang about a half of a chorus of one song with Ralph. That's the only audition I got. The song with the Stanley Brothers, Stone Walls and Steel Bars. He said, that'll be good. That's all he said. Well, the next thing I know, they come out of the back of the bus with 3 shirts, 3 blue shirts, and they're holding them up to me like this. Said, I believe that will work, don't you? Yeah? For what? Oh, you're going to play with us tonight. I had no idea I was going to do that. I thought I was, you know, so it did my hands, I'm shaky, I'm nervous. We get up there and do the show. And that turned into about a year and a half off and on of getting to go different places throughout the country and fill in the Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys. And once that was over, I made up my mind. There were so many things, you know, that could come into my life's path. But getting to go to places like the Grand Ole Opry and those are once in a lifetime opportunities. And I knew that college would always be there, that, you know, military service would always be, anything that I wanted to do would be there, but this was a one-time shot. If I didn't take it then, it would never come my way again. And I had lots of regrets, you know, after that, once I started my band and I realized all the struggles. And folks, it was uphill all the way. I never let on. But so many things were trying to get the band started. And at this time, I'm like 18, 19 years old. Do you realize how hard it is as an 18, 19-year-old kid to get on the phone, call up a seasoned, veteran, professional musician, and convince them to go out on the road with you and work some dates? They know nothing about you. They don't know anything you can do. And more importantly, they don't know that you can pay them. But I had so many people, even here on the local level, and 2 people that have been 2 of the best friends that I've ever had, and so supportive of me and the things I do. Kenny Price and Jack Prophet, they're still around today. They go out on the road with me and they hated every minute of it. They literally hate the traveling. Kenny Price told me, he said, I can work a 20-hour day with the best of men. He said, but those 2 or 3 days on the road at a time with you, he said, that's brutal. And it is. I mean, you know, especially back then, there'd be 5 or 6 of us in a car riding from Mountain City to, some of the first dates I ever booked were in places like Green Bay, Wisconsin, Bangor, Maine, Dallas, Texas, Plymouth, California. I kept wondering, why on earth are these people calling me from so far away? Nobody else was stupid enough to go that far away. But, you know, with putting this, you know, the whole time that all these things are falling in place, I'm still working toward a common goal. And I knew that with the right formula, with the right things to do, with the right, you know, we keep all this stuff channeled down the right path. Somewhere there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I had so many, I think to date, and I'd have to go back and get this, don't hold me to this, we'll put a little disclaimer here. I've had about 85 musicians come through the band and looking for the sound, looking for what I always had the sound, the Kody Norris show and what you see it today has been in this noggin of mine for 10 years prior to it ever existing. But to find those right people, to create that right sound, to create that right look, to sell that whole package is, you know, at one time it seemed as far away from me as trying to go to the moon on a bicycle. And there are, you know, people that, you know, just pop up that come through your life that without those key people, you know, being in, you know, in the right place at the right time, the stars just never align. And you know, from starting with Ralph Stanley and getting on the road at first, I missed like 80 days of my senior year of high school, really. And Betty Brown, Minnie Miller, and Russell Love were behind me like a rock wall. Man, they wanted me to do this thing. They did every single thing they could do to be sure that I had all the stuff that I needed on the road with me to, you know, send my homework home and do all the things. And I still graduated in the top 10% of my class some way. I don't know how in the world I done that, but I was very proud of that. And at graduation, I'll never forget this. Graduation was at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. They had me and Grady Stout to come up and sing Amazing Grace. Literally, as soon as they handed me my diploma, instead of going back to my seat, I file out this way, go out the back door, have to be to Tri-Cities to catch a plane to get back on the road where I just come in from to, you know, get graduated. And I didn't understand, even back then, why Russell Love, for instance, was always kind of oohing and ahhing over what I was doing. I didn't understand. I was just trying to make a living, trying to do the right things. But, you know, before I graduated high school, there's already, and this is not a bragging thing or anything, but I already had 3 people that I was keeping paid regularly, you know, at 18, 19 years old, and keeping them on the road and traveling around. And granted, they weren't paid much, but they were paid. And, you know, fast forward back to, you know, what I backed up a little bit there to kind of, you know, tell the story of how important having the right people behind you, you know, naturally is. But Mary Rachel came into my life. I was working on a TV show in Rosine, Kentucky, the home place of Bill Monroe. And I brag to everybody and tell them I met my wife in Bill Monroe's backyard. So that's kind of our little claim to fame. But the first time I actually saw Mary Rachel, she was only about 8 or 9 years old. She came on to the TV show that I was playing as a guest, playing a little kid playing the fiddle. And I got very acquainted with her dad. And her dad's a master carpenter. He's the best carpenter in the world. And he told me that he did interiors of buses. Well, I'm thinking I might ought to get to know this guy because I plan to have a bus one day and I might need something done. So you know, the first bus I had, he put the interior in it and just custom, just exactly like I wanted it. And little did I ever dream that this inquisitive, aggravating little girl would someday grow up to be quite the lady, and that be who God had in mind for me to be my wife. But I'll tell you this, and I'll stand on my own 2 feet and tell anybody anywhere this very thing. Mary Rachel Nally is the best thing that ever happened to Kody Norris. And she gave my life a purpose that I never had before, but more important, she's smart and she's driven. And every dream that I ever had, I knew how to take the music end of it and the formula, and I created the formula that you hear today, and I know how to teach that to people so that they play like I want them to play. But I was lacking, while I was worrying about all that stuff, life was kind of passing me by, and I hate technology. I still, to this day, I hate technology. It's a chore for me to send somebody back an email. Like I don't like to mess with it. I don't like to sit there. I hate to have to sit idle to do anything. Now I will email while I'm moving, if I can, you know, peck around on my phone a little bit and get it back to you. But Mary Rachel, her being a little bit younger than me, she was so smart in all those avenues, knew how to do all that stuff. And when she came on board, we then started putting the pieces together. And along comes Josiah Tyree, just on a whim. I had a banjo player and a bass player. We were out in Bullhead City, Arizona, and they were cousins. Well, they got cold feet, got scared, and came home. Here's Mary Rachel and me sitting out in the middle of the desert with 2 more weeks of show dates on the road and no band to play them with. And just happened to remember meeting Josiah at a convention in Nashville just a little ways before that. And she said, call that kid in Nashville. I said, that ain't going to do any good. His parents ain't no way they'll let him come halfway across the country. And, well, I called up his daddy, and 8 hours later, he's sitting at the Denver airport. So I ran over to Denver, Colorado, picked him up. We had a date the next day. We rehearsed a few things, and 8, 9 years later, Josiah's still here. He's relocated to Johnson County, raising his family here. Charlie Loman. I met Charlie at a show in Evanston, Illinois when he was about 14. He was sitting up folding chairs at the venue that I was at. And I told him, I said, if you'll hang around here about 3 hours while we hop back on the bus and get us some rest, I'll take you and buy your supper. Man, 3 hours on the dot, I opened my bus door and hit him with it. He's standing right in front of the bus door. And never dreamed or thought that this little kid I met 4 or 5 years later, our paths would cross again, and he wound up being in my band and just fit the pattern. And so we put the band together. We had the sound. Then comes the fun part, trying to assemble everything to get somebody to listen to it. And because there's only 10 million people doing that same thing that you're doing, and trying to find that competitive edge, and to do all the right things, but. You've always heard that story, being at the right place at the right time. I've had that happen to me 2 times. One of those days was in Canton, Texas. We were out there playing. There was a lady out in the crowd. She comes up, introduces herself, talks about how much she likes our music, no different than 20,000 people do every other weekend, everywhere we go. But after the show, she's hanging around, and I slipped around and asked Mary Rachel, I said, what's that lady doing? She said, I guess she wants to talk to you. I don't know. Well, I go back to the bus and change and come back. She's still standing there. Well, she begins to tell me, her background and so many of the things she's done. Any of you remember the Mike and Molly TV show? Anybody remember that? Yeah. Okay. She was a big part, one of the producers with that show. Her brother was the country comedian Rodney Carrington was her brother. He's done so many things, and she loved bluegrass. And she said, you've got something special. We need to sell it to somebody. I said, well, from my side of the fence, all I've heard is just horror stories, one after another. So she calls me up in a couple of weeks. We have a meeting. The next thing you know, I'm sitting in Nashville, and she said, there's some people I want you to meet tonight. And when I get off the bus, walk into my dressing room and open the door, it's full of people. I can't even get in there. I couldn't have changed clothes in there if I'd have tried. And it's a whole room full of industry people. And, we sit down and have some talks and this and that. And I told Mary Rachel when we left, I said, this is never going anywhere. I've heard this bugle blow before. I know how that deal goes. Well, what she did, Holly Bonnet, she assembled an absolute A-team for the Kody Norris show. I have, as far as marketing, publicity, management, everything, I can honestly stand here. I have the world's greatest as far as what suits me and what I do. The most important part of this, they believe in Kody Norris. They believe in what I do. They believe in my mission. And it's more than about $1 with these people. They know that the mission statement of the Kody Norris show, first and foremost, always and always will be to make a memory. When somebody comes to a Kody Norris show, I want them to leave there with a smile on their face, and it be one of the most pleasant experiences they've ever had in their life. That's the goal. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do every day. But the important part and the big picture is preserving the music that I grew up with, that was so special to me as a child, so important to me, and the fact that and the show business element that mesmerized me as a child, from Porter Wagner to Webb Pierce to all these people, that those elements of show business never die. And all Jenny's kind words before I come up here, the awards, the accolades, all that is far more than anything that I ever dreamed of. This week, last year, the Bluegrass Hall of Fame in Owensboro, Kentucky, opened an exhibit. It's one of the largest exhibits in the Bluegrass Hall of Fame. And when you walk in the door, it's huge. And right across the top of that, it says Rhinestone Revival. And Rhinestone Revival was the title of an album that we cut, which was Bluegrass Album of the Year in 2024. But their take on Rhinestone Revival is, and I didn't know I'd done anything, but apparently we kind of started a movement of bringing younger artists back, and younger fans back to the music because of the way we've presented it. And it's a wonderful feeling at my shows. Our demographic has shifted. We now have people of all ages coming to the shows. And as of just a few months ago, the 18 to 35-year-old crowd are coming to Kody Norris show bluegrass music presentations throughout the country, throughout the world. And you'll never know how much that means to me, that we've been able to captivate that younger audience, no different than I was captivated at a young age, to bring them to the shows that they can see what the purest presentation of good old-time, down-home country entertainment is. And making, all this whole process, and I'm gonna close with just these last couple remarks, making all of that come full circle to me. The biggest dream of every musician that I've ever known in any genre of music was to get to walk onto the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. And being there before in my lifetime with other people was wonderful, but getting a formal invitation in July of 2023, a program called Bluegrass Nights at the Ryman, which is sponsored by Springer Mountain Farms Chicken Company. They've been doing this for many, many years. It was a celebration that night of Rhonda Vincent's birthday, and we were asked to come and perform on the show as an opening act. The management of the Grand Ole Opry just happened to be there that night. They saw our show, they saw what we did, and I don't think that loud applause and that standing ovation hurt us any either. But after that, the manager of the Opry, who is just Dan Rogers, who's one of the most wonderful men I've ever met, asked Rhonda Vincent to come out there and invite us to make our Grand Ole Opry debut. And the most life-changing thing that ever happened for Kody Norris is the night that we were invited to make our Grand Ole Opry debut. Then August the 9th comes around that same summer. We make our debut, and within a year and a half, we've made 6 appearances on the Grand Ole Opry, and it's changed our world. It's changed every single thing in our world. From, now we're playing country music festivals. We're playing Americana. It's not just bluegrass, but I'm still playing the same music that I've always played, which was the ultimate goal, to take the music, do the same thing I've always done, but be able to take it to the masses. And something else that Jenny alluded to, in all my marketing, in every single thing that I do, no matter where I go, where I'm at, the MC is given a sheet on me to introduce me to come out on the stage. And the last line of that is always, make welcome from Mountain City, Tennessee, the Kody Norris Show. I'm so proud of where I'm from. My family's been here longer than I can count on the 2 sides, and I've traced it back a long, long way. And we were here before, basically before this, part of Tennessee was part of anything, really. I'm very proud of this area. I'm proud of everything that's here. I want to see it preserved for generations to come. I want people, from now to eternity, to come to Mountain City, Tennessee, to see what we have here, see how wonderful that it is. And I hope that I played just a little part in holding on to that. I hope I can continue to do that as we roll along. And for no matter, it's a great thing. We do a lot of international touring now, and when people come up to me in another country and want to know what a mountain city is, what is so I'm gonna have to come. Maybe I can talk with Webster and we get that put in the dictionary one day on just exactly what that is. But I can sum that up in one word: wonderful. Mountain City, Tennessee is wonderful. I hope that it always stays just like it is, to where it's a good hometown feel and a good sense of community. And I couldn't be more proud to be from anywhere. Thank y'all for listening to me ramble for half an hour. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much, and God bless y'all. Thank you. And really quick, I didn't get to this, but I'm going to hold this up and show this to you. This is what started pretty much everything for me. This was Coolidge Allen's Gibson mandolin. My mom and dad purchased this for me from the family maybe about 6 months or so after he passed away. And this mandolin has traveled to every show date that I've played since that time. This thing's been all over the world with us. Mary Rachel plays this on the show right now. And without this, this is my most prized possession. Without this, there wouldn't be a Kody Norris that you see today. I learned everything that I've ever learned on this. I've written pretty much every song I've ever written on this, and worked out all the melodies and all that type of thing. And I'll show you this really quick. This was taken off the wall in Coomage Allen's house. This is a promo picture of his band from 1948. And there's a couple people in that picture who actually left his band to go to work for Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. So that kind of tells you just kind of the things he was doing. But I've never reframed it. It's still got the info on the back, just like it came off of the wall in their house. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.